Hello, and welcome to this week's podcast. I'm excited to have you here again. Today, we get to explore how you can combine your passion with your profits. So many people I speak to and business owners I speak to always want to help society. So they want to do something different. They want to make an impact. They want to change. But what I find most of the time is they give, and they're struggling for money themselves. They're struggling to be fulfilled, and often they're struggling to fill their own desires, whether that's at home with their family, or just their own income desires as well. Or worse still, they're going up that career ladder, they've hit their career ceiling, and then they're sitting there feeling totally unfulfilled. Now, these are some of the common things that I've noticed, and I'm sure we're going to explore some more today as we talk to the wonderful Laura Parr, who's coming on with us. We're going to explore how you can start to combine your passion with your profits to find more fulfillment in your everyday life. Now, Laura is amazing. She's an entrepreneur, she's a business coach, and she's the founder now of Conscious Business Design. So I'm really excited to have you here, Laura. Welcome to our podcast show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Brilliant. So now I'm going to get you to share, obviously, just a little bit of context, a little bit of background about you. But one of the things I'm really interested in, as you're now the founder of Conscious Business Design, I'm really interested in that transition you made from obviously your corporate consulting role in Accenture into running your own business. But tell us a bit about your background as well, so people can get a feel for who you are and who is Laura.
Yeah, so I have a business background in that that's what I studied at university up in good old Nottingham. Really enjoyed sort of studying that, found it really interesting. But as is, I think, the way with a lot of education, you kind of get pushed into sort of the particular careers that university, deemed to be the best ones for you to go for. So I hadn't really ever considered consulting before, but that's where I ended up. And I did enjoy it. I like you said, I worked at Accenture for a while. I enjoyed the clients. It was a bit of a challenge. I met my husband there, so it didn't all go badly wrong.
Kind of helps.
It does help. But it was just never for me. I think I've always been, and if you ask my parents and my sister and so forth, I've always been an entrepreneur from start to finish. So, my sister joked with me the other day about how I was trying to monetize my drawings at 6 years old. So it was.
I was going to say, were you a child at school doing the haggling and the negotiating at school?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. There's a business opportunity in everything.
Love it.
But I think my parents also are both self-employed, and they have been for years. So it's how I grew up. It's what I've seen, and it's my interest and it's my passion. So as much as I love the consulting, something just didn't quite sit right with me. And it just wasn't sort of fulfilling me. And so, it got to the stage where they were talking about promotion, and I kind of, you're in the wrong place really when you're like, probably wouldn't bother. Because I just figured
most people are there for the promotion.
Well, exactly. And the amount of time that I, would have to spend extra on, putting myself forward for promotion, doing brown bags and lunchtimes, all those sorts of different things. I was spending that time already researching property, which was another one of my loves and my passions. And, I grew up watching Homes Under the Hammer and absolutely loved the whole thing. And so I just thought, actually, if I already know that I'm not where I want to be, do I want to spend more time securing my place in the place I want to be, or don't want to be, or do I use it to, figure out what I do want to do? So that's how I transitioned out into the property world. I started doing it alongside my corporate career. And then I kind of, I got on the circuit. I started to learn that actually you didn't need money to start in property, because that was my misconception at the beginning. And I kind of thought, well, at least I could just learn now so that I'm ready when I do have money in sort of, 20, 30 years time. Turned out I could do it now. So, that got me more interested, obviously. And I caught the eye of a particular developer who then offered me a job. So I went and worked for him for a little bit, and then went out on my own. And I've been running a property company for the last 10 years or so. I sold it actually earlier this year. I still do a little bit of management, but realistically, I made the discovery that as much as I love property, and this was a really interesting realization for me, was I thought I was following my passion, whereas in actual fact, property is an all-encompassing word, and it covers so many different facets. And I did everything from development through to deal sourcing, through to something called rent to rent. And I ended up spending most of my time doing property management, which, as it turns out, I hate. So, by the end of it, I just, all the love for it had been sucked out a little bit.
Yep.
And even though I've exited that industry, I still love property, but I don't love the aspect I was doing. And I think that was the really big kind of difference, but I hadn't taken the time to really think it through. I'd essentially just followed the money and followed where I knew, I could be successful potentially, but I hadn't actually sat and thought about how much I was really going to enjoy it. I just saw it as a means to an end, and I was like, yeah, but it's property, of course I'll enjoy it. I didn't. So towards the end of it, I think I've always been fascinated in sort of the human psychology side of why we do things, what we do, like how we feel. Personal development has been a journey that I've been on for years and years and years, and I just think it's incredible. And so, that's what then led me down the road of, well, if that's not my passion, what is my passion? And what is my purpose, and why am I here, and what do I want to do? And here I am as a business coach. And realistically, this fills and ticks so many more of my boxes, but it's just nothing that I would ever have thought of, maybe 10 years ago when I was getting started in property. But yeah, so that's the journey to sort of how I got here. And now I love everything I do. I help so many amazing people create some incredible businesses, all of which we try to find some kind of way of helping people back in terms of, economically or socially or environmentally, and really getting people to look at the basics and the fundamentals of how to start a business that is going to serve you long term and not just make you money. So basically, don't make the same mistake that I did. Don't follow the money, follow your purpose.
There's a couple of things I want to really unpack there. So you've kind of tapped into one of my questions I was going to ask you anyway, was around, my pet hate of, I hate the word follow your purpose, because it's so overused now. Follow your passion. It's so overused. So there's two things that stem from what you've said for me. One is that quite often we don't know what our purpose is yet, and so it holds us back from finding it. So the way that you've done it is you stepped out, done something, and realized it wasn't quite right, and then you found what you want to do. So I think that's one of the first things. But the second thing is also that if you follow your passion, sometimes, like you said, people don't necessarily explore their passion as a business. So I think, it's very easy to say we have this great hobby or passion for, say, cake making or golfing or whatever, but then to try and turn it into a business is a whole different kettle of fish. Oh, yes. And actually, sometimes it can ruin the passion. So I'm really curious around kind of what's your take on my pet hate of you have to follow your passion. What's your take on that? How do you kind of get the passion, understand what you do enjoy, but also then build a really successful business around it?
Well, do you know what? You've picked a really good example, because I love to bake. And I made my brother-in-law's wedding cake, 4-tier wedding cake, and I put so much effort into it, and I was so proud of it at the end. That people were sort of saying, well, why don't you start a baking business? Why don't you? And I just thought, I can't imagine anything worse. Like, it's fun for me. That was a passion, because it's fun when I get to do it on my terms, and I got to do it around my other work, and it was different. It was exciting. It was, for somebody that I knew and loved. But the thought of, people calling me up being like, sorry, it's last minute, but I need a 4-tier cake by Wednesday, just didn't fill me with joy in any way. So I absolutely agree that there are certain things that are passions and they're hobbies, and they should remain hobbies. And it's totally okay for that to be the case. You don't have to. It is one way of starting to look for what your purpose actually is look at the things that you enjoy doing, but that doesn't mean that they immediately become your business ideas, because there are certain things that you just wouldn't want to take that far. But the two things that I would probably say with this is, number one, finding your purpose, for me, I think is fundamental. It's really, really important, because I think if people don't have a purpose and they don't really know why they're doing things, that's how we drift. And that's how we get to sort of 40, 50, 60, and we look back and we kind of go, oh, okay, well, that was nice, but I wish I'd done this, or, I wish I'd done that. But it actually creates, it's not like purpose comes and smacks you in the face when you're not looking. Sometimes you actually do have to to do some work, you know. And I've spoken to lots of people before that have said, you know, I don't know what my purpose is, but, you know, I'll figure it out one day. But they're not actively looking for it. They're not trying to work it out. And I do think it takes some active work. For me, when I was trying to figure it out, there was a lot of soul searching. There was a lot of, you know, what do I believe that the point in all of this is? What do I want to leave as my legacy? I kept, the question that I always kind of kept asking myself was, if I'm lying on my deathbed, what am I thinking back at and thinking, I'm so damn proud of that. Like, I'm so glad I did that. And it certainly wasn't getting a maintenance man out to sort a boiler. So, you know, it was very easy for me to then kind of go, okay, well, if it's not that, then, you know, imagine yourself lying on your deathbed and thinking, I'm so glad I did that, or that's what I'm known for, or this is what I'll be remembered for. And what is that thing? And sometimes that can kind of, you know, trigger your brain into giving you at least some idea. And it doesn't come instantaneously. For some people, maybe, but, you know, for a lot of people, I thought about a few different things, and I thought about, well, maybe I'd enjoy this too. And I'd also enjoy this, and I'd enjoy this. And it took a lot of kind of talking to myself to figure out and whittle it down and kind of say, well, actually, they're sort of connected, and, you know, maybe that would be interesting. And then just open up to curiosity and try things. You know, you might not find your purpose for 2 years, but are you going to sit around and do nothing for 2 years? No. You might as well, you know, start that thinking process and then say, okay, well, maybe it is baking. So you go and do a few baking classes, you try a few things out, you do a bit of research, and then you go, no, do you know what? It's not. Okay, that's fine. For a lot of people, they consider that a failure. They consider it a waste of time. It's absolutely not a waste of time. You'll have learned something amazing about yourself, or about, you know, something interconnected with, you know, baking, but also maybe this other thing, and you kind of go, okay, so it's not baking, but it's maybe this instead. So you try that out, and just opening yourself up to curiosity and trying out a few different things will really help you to understand, actually, is this something that I really want to do? And pin it back to your values at the end of the day. Like, I love, again, I mean, stick with the example of baking. I love baking, but from a value perspective, if you actually do your value work, and this is again something that a lot of people haven't yet done, it's a really simple exercise, but to actually know what your top values are, will allow you to understand whether it's just a fad, like something that you kind of enjoy doing every now and again, or you might like right now, but it's not going to be a thing in 5 years' time, to something that you can really see yourself being driven by for the next 10 years. And the other point that I would definitely make, which is a huge misconception about purpose, is that it doesn't have to be forever. Everybody thinks that you've got to figure your purpose out, and that's it. That's life done. Like, I've figured life out. You know.
Sorted.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and I've got it going on now for the next sort of 70 years.
Yeah.
And that's not true. You know, your purpose might change. And I think this conception that, or this idea that we have to, once we know our purpose, that's it. It puts so much pressure on making that purpose the right one.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people have an idea as to what they want to do, but they're not necessarily sure if that's like their life's mission, but that puts them off from starting.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, starting, giving it a go, and if it changes in a few years' time, it changes in a few years' time. But so long as you've done the fundamental work to sort of realize why it is that you're doing what you're doing, you know, how you can make it align more to your values and what it is that you sort of deem to be true about yourself, you're far more likely to be in a successful business long term. But, you know, if you turn around in 20 years' time and say, do you know what, that chapter of my life is over, fine, you know, and you want to turn around and go, I'll be a scuba instructor now. Great. That sounds brilliant. But that doesn't mean you've wasted the last 20 years. Do you know what I mean? It's you've got to allow yourself the ability to be curious and start things, and just know that it doesn't have to be forever. And that takes so much pressure off this idea that you're coming to this one massive life conclusion that will determine everything from here until you die.
Yeah, I think that's really important because, you know, the other thing there for me is also being able to let go of something. Because like you said, you went into property, you loved it, you made a success of it and you did it, but you soon realized it wasn't the thing. And I think so many people hold on to something for too long because it's like you said, whether there's a fear of like, oh, what happens if I do change what I'm doing? And it's it is that sort of shift that it's okay, like you said, just to try something, or it's okay to get to a certain area. I remember I had a good friend of mine who ran a really successful cookie business, lovely cookies, incredible. But then she was about to go to that stage where it was big production line type thing.
Right.
And that was when she made the decision. She was like, I don't want to go that way anymore. It's ruined the element of what I wanted to do. And that's when you've got to make those decisions sometimes. And it's okay to do that. So I really love that. It's tapping into that. And the fact that for me, purpose, one of my big pet hates was definitely it holds people back from even getting started. So you've really touched on that beautifully, is the fact that sometimes your purpose will develop as you take steps and take action moving forward. And just a quick side note, one of my favorite books is a book by Bronwyn Ware called Biggest Regrets of Dying. If you haven't read it, read it, because if you have been sitting there procrastinating, that will kickstart it. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, it's really kind of sealed, some of my thoughts around purpose as well. And hopefully it's got you thinking around, you don't have to have this massive big purpose to get started. Sometimes it's good to get started. So let's transition into that in relation to one of the biggest struggles that we see quite often. I know I've experienced it, and I'm sure you've experienced some of it, is that transition mode going from, especially if you're in corporate. So I had a lot of people say to me, oh, how did you transition out after so many years of doing the thing that you know the most into now running your own business? What's some of the biggest struggles that you see, and how could we potentially get around those?
Yeah, I think this is a big one, because I think that there's, for those who maybe haven't done entrepreneurship before but are sort of jumping into that, there's a few things that you end up seeing. You see people that sort of assume that it's in one way relatively easy, because it's like, oh great, well I've got rid of the boss, everything's my decision, so that makes it super simple.
That was mine. No more answering to the boss, no more approval.
I know, which
of holidays.
Great.
Yeah,
absolutely,
great.
It's a lovely
There's a
thing.
but coming. Yes.
Yes, exactly. And the but a lot of the time is there's also no one kicking you up the arse if you don't do certain things, or there's nobody as well. The one thing that a lot of people find, and I definitely found as well, is loneliness. If you're going to start a business on your own, you might be working from home for the next 5-10 years. You may or may not have colleagues. Some people build a business and they employ a few people, and that's great, but a lot of people are able to do things on their own. And that means that there's nobody there for not just camaraderie, but to be able to bounce ideas off of each other, and to, you forget that certain things are so simple. And I've had this conversation with my husband and a couple of friends who are still working in corporate, and they're so used to just having people around them, having colleagues, having works drinks. And works drinks, are the after works perk. But in actual fact, sometimes you throw a few ideas out and somebody says, oh yeah, but what about this? Or, and stuff gets resolved. And I didn't have that, because I didn't have anybody that worked with me. So 100%, you might think you can do it on your own, and potentially you can. However, support is huge. Absolutely huge. And I see so many people that don't get support, again, myself included. I was one of those people that's, stubborn. And and I went down the route of, no, I can figure this one out on my own, thank you. And I did, but it probably took me 5 times as long as it could have done.
And it might not be quite as fun either. It's
no,
always fun
exactly.
to have someone to bounce off of and share ideas. And
yeah, absolutely. And all of that stuff, you've got someone that helps keep you accountable, somebody that you can run things by, somebody that can pick you up, because it's not always going to be perfect and, fandabidozy. You're not going to create this business and suddenly you've got 1 million customers within your first week. There's going to be some really tough points. So, you need somebody on your side that is going to be fighting your corner, basically, and pushing you and noticing that you're down and sort of saying, right, we're going to do a bit of a pick me up, I'm here for you type thing, which are things that you take for granted until you leave the corporate space and you realize that, actually your colleagues were kind of doing that to a certain extent.
Yeah, no, I love
so
that.
That's really important, I think. And I think part of what sort of comes with that support as well is knowledge, because, yes, you might have been very high up in your corporate role, and that's amazing. And you can definitely bring a huge amount of transferable skills. And again, depending upon what it is that you're starting, you might have a lot of what you need as well. But have some humility and understand that there are certain things that you just are not going to know about. Or, somebody will know better, even if you do know about it. And it's better to outsource it, or it's better to, speak to somebody that knows a bit better. They might be able to do it quicker. They might be able to do it better. They might be able to do it cheaper. So rather than sort of having this, I'm going to prove myself mentality and do it all on my own. You can, and yes, there is a sort of money saving element to it, but it actually in the long run, it probably isn't, because you may well have been profitable a lot sooner had you actually just taken some help on.
Yeah, I can definitely vouch for that one. I've let go just a little bit earlier.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Embrace the stuff that you're not good at. Again, it's a failure thing. Everyone sort of sees it as like a, oh, well, I'm not good at this and I don't really want to advertise that because, people will think I'm stupid. And it's like, well, no, everybody is bad at something. It's just that we don't necessarily always talk about it. And I think the other thing as well that has been a real thing for a lot of clients that I've worked with has been the mental side of it. So, the imposter syndrome and the, can I actually do this? And, what if I fail? And, all the things that come along with it, that in reality, when you're in a corporate role, I'm not saying you don't have that, because I certainly did when I was in my corporate role too. But again, you're supported and you have, certain avenues that you can go down, or even if something goes sort of badly, it's part of the team's mistake potentially, or it's something that your boss can help you to work through and overcome, and you get put on the next project. Whereas you fail as a business owner, the potential is a lot higher. So it's well, you could go bankrupt, you could lose all your money, all these sorts of different things. So people have a higher level of fear when it comes to starting businesses. And that's when you go in thinking, well, it's got to be perfect, it's got to be right before I start. And either people don't start, or they do and they panic and they go really slowly, and they're looking at perfectionism. So it's overcoming the mental side of things that's actually far more important, I would say, than some of the skill set side that comes with, learning how to do your own accounts or, anything like that, because it's the mental side that will hold you back. And it's the mental side that will force you into positions where you question yourself, don't do as much, all these sorts of different things. And you might not even attribute that to the mental sort of questions you have going around in your head and sort of the conscious work that you're doing. Because a lot of people, again, they look externally and they sort of say, well, that didn't happen because the supplier wasn't on board, or they didn't answer my email, or this didn't happen, that didn't happen. And actually a lot of time when you reflect inwards, you realize maybe there is a block there, or there is something that you've been self-sabotaging on, or there is something that's holding you back from, going all out, and your business is growing, but it's not growing as big as it could be or as fast as it could be. So it's hugely important. And it's one aspect when you do traditional business training that just isn't really covered.
Yeah, and it's not covered in a lot of things. I remember definitely in the corporate space, I didn't get any of that type of training, but it wasn't until I started in the entrepreneurial world, I was like, oh, wow, this is not, like you said, it's not a business journey. It's a mindset. It's a personal development journey. And my biggest issue was always identity, because obviously, like you said, when I was so successful at what I did, my whole business and what I did in my career was wrapped up with my identity. And so for me, it was the identity shift. It was like, oh, suddenly, who am I? I don't know who I am anymore. And I've seen that play out quite a lot, especially coming from the corporate space. Is like suddenly they don't have this identity of who they are. So if someone's sitting there thinking about either making the move, or they've made the move and maybe things aren't going as smoothly as they like, what's some of those things that they can actually start to do? So what's a couple of practical things if they're struggling a little bit with their mindset, or they're thinking, I want to do this, but maybe I'm a bit fearful of it. Maybe I'm not quite sure. What should they start to do? What's a couple of things that they can actually sit down and start doing today?
Things that you can start doing today. I mean, there is a wealth of information on the internet. I would say number one for me is firstly start identifying where you feel the issues may lie. And that might be, go and find a mentor, or go and find a coach, have a bit of therapy, whatever it is that works for you. But actually some self-reflection and, as a trained coach, one of the things that we learn in coaching is around your ability to open up and question yourself, because we're, as human beings, we're quite defensive. So if someone sort of says, you've not done that right, we want to jump straight back into being like, well, you didn't do this right, or actually I did do it right because, and we don't actually self-reflect on where we could maybe improve. So spending that time and actually identifying where the blocks are first it's crucial, because if you don't know where the blocks are and you don't know where the issues are stemming from, then how are you going to resolve it in the first place? So it's it's where I sort of start a lot of the time with some of my clients. We do some values work. We try and work out, where are your highest values? What is it that you believe to be and hold true for yourself and for life generally across the board, not just in business, but just across the board? Because obviously if you're starting your business, you're going to bring your values into that to begin with anyway. And then it's about, understanding what it is that you want, and what you feel are the issues that are holding you back. And there are so many, the reason I said that, the internet is a wealth is that there's so much free information out there that to start today, you could start, Googling some of these things. You could start, looking at, there's so many sort of free coaching sessions online, for example, that you can watch someone be coached, or you can listen to coaches who talk about particular topics, or podcasts that are on particular topics. Start to learn about how your mind works, start to learn about where these things come from, because a lot of the time it will stem back to something that you were told in childhood, or an experience you had in childhood that you are, the way our brains work, they're very sort of malleable at that age, but you don't have the ability, you don't have the sort of conscious awareness and understanding to be able to say, no, that's not true. And so we create stories about the events that have happened. What the event that happened and the story that you understand about the event that happened are two entirely separate things. But we as human beings amalgamate the two together. And that's when you grow up sort of being like, well, I'm not worthy, or money comes hard to me because of X, Y, and Z. And actually, when you look back, it's because you've seen something, heard something, experienced something that has triggered something in you to then make that decision. And that's how you've lived for the rest of your life up until this point. So being able to sort of understand that and know that it can be changed. And that's what I think is fascinating. Like, before any of this work, people just think, well, that's who I am. That just, it sucks, but that's how I roll. And actually, that's not true. And I think one of the most liberating things that you can ever learn is that you are in 100% complete control of what you do. You can have thoughts and you can still think, well, money's hard, or I'm not worthy, or whatever, but then you don't just have to accept that as who you are. You can change that if you want to, and you can do the work. And some of it might be a bit painful, a bit hard work. You're going to dig a couple of things up, but actually in the long run, you look at the people that are most successful in business, it's the ones that really delve deep into who they are and understand where their triggers are, understand where their blocks are, and overturn those as well, and really allow their mind to understand that it can be changed. And that for a lot of people is hugely liberating to understand that.
Yeah, mine was definitely that I have to work harder. And then all you do is go into burnout. It doesn't work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it was that hard work and reward. It was like, if I worked harder, I get paid more. If I work harder, I get this. It's like, realizing that actually I can earn money with ease has been my biggest thing this year. So it's quite interesting.
Very, very similar. Yeah. Mine was definitely that money doesn't come easy and you have to work hard. And if something is easy, I sit back and I'm kind of like, it can't be right. There's something they're not telling me here.
It's like, oh, hang on, they're just coming to my account.
Yeah, exactly. But noticing that that's what you do, that's my point. That's the first sort of level, is being aware of it. Because most people do that and they don't really think about it and they move on with their day. Whereas to be able to notice when you say something to yourself, because we're our biggest critics. And at the end of the day, most of the stuff that we say to ourselves in our head is something that we would never say to another human being. So why are we okay saying it to ourselves? We can be pretty horrible to ourselves sometimes. Like, you're not worth it. You're not pretty enough. You're not good enough. You don't have enough experience. People aren't going to want to listen to you. You say these things in your head all the time, but having that conscious level of awareness to be able to notice that you're saying it, stop yourself, and then just reframe whatever it is that you're trying to do. And that's where, we can go into.
Yeah, we can spend all day on mindset.
Oh yeah, I love it. It's a great topic.
Yeah, it is. But I think it's really important too, because I think that, lots of people when they're starting businesses or they've got ideas, they look for the tactics and strategies. So we talk about this a lot, don't they? They look for the tactics, they look for the strategies. How am I going to do it? And they overlook it, because sometimes mindset is, like I said, it's not sexy, but
No.
it's the thing that you need to do. So, you know, for like you said, any long-term success in your business, it is the thing that you need to work on continually.
I think a lot of people, they can't put an ROI on it as well.
That's it.
You know,
that's
you know, when you watch some stuff about marketing, you kind of think, okay, well, if my marketing spend is this, then I should be able to get that back, and I'll be able to get that many clients, and you can kind of figure it out. And so it's spending money to make money. Whereas when it's mindset, people deem it to be less important, because it's like, well, I could be going forever and I have no idea how much I'm going to be spending on it. And is it really getting me anywhere in business, and so forth? So yeah, people focus on sales and marketing and all those sorts of different things, which are important for sure, but not if you don't have the mindset to hold yourself up.
Yeah, and I think, and it is true. And I think until you've experienced it sometimes, like you said, till you've been for that therapy session that's uncovered something you're like hiding for 20 years, or you've been through the change and the speed that it can shift something, like whether that's in your business or in your life. I think once you've experienced the first time, then you start to really value it. I know most of my friends now have a therapist in their pocket to a certain degree. It's like someone that they can turn to. So I really love that. And I think that we talked about putting some foundations in your business and knowing that, you know, this is the hard grit of building a business. There's so much kind of I guess quick fixes out there. Everyone wants a quick fix nowadays. We all want a quick win. Everything has to be done overnight. And I think that, you know, we all know that long-term success is built on solid foundations. You know, it's like anything. You have to build these foundations. So I think you and I share a passion around that in relation to that. We tell it how it is sometimes to our detriment, maybe the fact that, you know, it's like, it's like the gym guys saying, oh yeah, you can lose all this weight, and you, by the way, you won't sweat or have pain, or it won't hurt, or you won't go, oh my God, I want to give up now. And there's so much of that gloss out there. So, you know, when you're thinking about your business and kind of helping people get started or helping people make that transition, what are some of the things that you sort of, I guess, what's the word? Not stipulate, but what do you get them to work on that may not seem so sexy, but you know it's the things that make or break success in businesses? What do they need to do? What's a couple of steps?
Okay. So I'll give you a couple on the mindset side, but also on the practical side as well, just to sort of balance it out, I suppose. So I've already mentioned values, and I've already mentioned limiting beliefs. So those are two things that I definitely work on as a fundamental sort of starting point with a lot of my clients. Because again, as I've said, if you don't know why you're there, then, you know, it's not going to last very long. The one I would add to that as well is from a mindset perspective, I also do an exercise around everyone's rich life. Because I think this is the problem that I find sometimes, is that people will start a business. They either come up with a fantastic idea and they go, right, that's it. This is going to be the next Google. I'm going to go for it. And, you know, they think that this is going to be the thing that gets rid of the boss, and, you know, they're going to bring in loads of money and they're going to be on a beach in the Bahamas. And they don't necessarily take the time to step back and sort of say, why do I like this? What is it going to provide me what I want? And so you find so many people saying, I want to be self-employed and I want to start my own thing because I want time with my family, and I want to, you know, work 4 hours in a week or 10 hours in a week, and I want this to be autonomous, and, you know, all these sorts of different things. And then they end up setting up a business that, you know, sounds like it's great fun and maybe is sort of aligned with their passion and their purpose, but it requires them to be there 24/7, and then they're missing family holidays, and they're working every hour that God sends, and you know, all these sorts of different things. So it's not surprising that even though it is aligned with their passion or their purpose, it doesn't take them very long to start getting annoyed at it, frustrated at it. The love starts to die. It becomes work rather than play. And the business doesn't last very long. And then they step back and they kind of go, well, I don't understand why, because I love whatever it may be. But it's because it doesn't actually fulfill what you need as a person. You know, and yes, especially with people that want to give back as well. And that's my speciality, as you said at the beginning, is that I love working with people that you know, want to find an aspect of their company that helps in some way in terms of a social need, or you know, an economic need, or an environmental one. And so a lot of people come with the mentality of, but I can't charge because I need to help people. And it's all about helping people. But again, if you're not fulfilling your need of being able to pay a mortgage, and you're allowed wants as well. Do you know what I mean? It's not just about paying your mortgage. Like, you want to go on holiday, and you should want to go on holiday. Like, this is your life. If you just paid the mortgage and helped people until the day that you died, there's a lot of people that that's not hugely satisfying to a certain extent. And people feel selfish saying that, but it's not. It's not selfish to want to have some time out. It's not selfish to want to explore different countries. It's not selfish to want to enjoy your life. So being able to fully understand, what do you want from life? Where are you going with it? So that you don't make the mistake of creating a business that squashes one of those, really, really important things for you. And actually, when you ask people, a lot of people aren't really aware what they want. They kind of have this idea like, oh, I want to retire at some point. But I get really, really specific. So, it's what does retirement mean to you? And even if you're talking about traveling, like, that's great, but where do you want to go? And if you pick a country, I go, right, which part of the country, which hotel are you going to? How long are you staying for? Who are you traveling with? Are you going first class or are you going economy? Like, I want to know all the details, because the more vision that you can create in that trip, it suddenly doesn't become this, far off distant thing that maybe might happen one day. It's something you're working towards. And it's something that you can actually visually see. You could go online. If you need the inspiration, you're having one of those days, which hotel you're going to go look at because you've already picked where you're staying, or what waterfall you're going to see, or what incredible thing that it is that you're going to do. And it becomes your boost and it becomes your inspiration. So getting really, really clear on why you're doing all of this is a huge thing that people skip. They miss that entirely because they're so excited about getting into this new product or service that they want to create that they don't really think about that. But I find that when you don't, like I say, that's when you create businesses that really don't actually work for you in the long run. They might work for a while, they might work for a couple of years, they might even work for 10, but they will get to a point where it becomes a hard slog because something somewhere is not being fulfilled. So it's trying to eliminate that from the very beginning and trying to actually do all the pre-work and the foundations for working it out so that you love what you do for as long as you possibly can.
Love it.
And then on the
saving time and money too.
Well, 100%, exactly.
Practical, yeah.
From a helping perspective as well, to the people that are there to help. You're going to help so much more people if you're going for 20 years rather than 10. So, you want to know that you're enjoying it and that you're able to do more than just, cover your mortgage or, pay your bills. You can help people and you can go on holidays. Like, it's okay to want to be rich and also help people at the same time. These two things are not, one or the other. You can have them both. And I think that's a massive misconception, is that people assume that it's selfish to want to be rich, and that if you really do genuinely want to help people, that you can't be rich in the interim, because that's not fair. Yeah. And that's coming back down to mindset. That's a belief system that's been created somewhere and it's working out why, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's all of the charity based, isn't it, as well? I always find that really fascinating. Yeah, because it is, and it's a big thing that holds people back. And you're like, no, you need to have your own oxygen mask on first. And I always say to people, you can do so much more with money. It's like, it doesn't have to be about the money from a money perspective. But if you earn good money, you generally do good things. Like most people, especially if they're already of that nature and they want to give back and they want to make a difference, they want to make an impact. Amazing what you can do with a little bit of extra cash to help make that happen.
And it alleviates for a lot of people as well. It alleviates some stress, which means actually your focus is more on the helping side of things rather than, oh my God, how am I going to pay my bills this month because I haven't made enough? And when you're in that state, in that frame of mind, you can't be doing them any favors. No. And it was interesting. I had a client recently and she very much wants, her whole ethos and one of her highest values is helping people. And you can see it across all aspects of her life. So it's very much ingrained in her. And she was really struggling for about 9 months prior to sort of us working together with, how am I going to charge for this service that she's creating? Because it's aimed at being able to help people who are at an economic disadvantage to be able to understand sort of money concepts and so forth more. So she was like, I just don't understand how this is going to work because I don't get how I can sort of do it.
Mm.
And and fund her own life as well, because she
Yep.
felt guilty, charging people 30 quid for something, let alone, some actual decent money for it. And it didn't matter how much I sort of, tried to talk to her about the value of what she was providing. It was like, yeah, but they can't afford it. Yeah, but they can't afford it. And that was just a big stumbling block. And it literally only took a conversation about business models, and me explaining the Robin Hood business model, which is essentially having two subsets of clients, and the ones that are able to afford it more get charged more. And it almost a little bit like when lawyers have pro bono hours and things like that.
Yes.
There is a way for you to be able to charge a premium price, get what you deserve for your time, and then offer a certain amount of time or a certain number of people, or have a way for people who just simply won't ever be able to afford that to get the information for free or a small amount. And suddenly something just clicked in her brain, and it was just like, oh, this is going to work. Yeah.
And I love that, because you can, and it's really hard. And I think you've nailed it there, especially if you're dealing with potentially a slightly, like you said, less economic fortunate. I always talk about helping single mums and things like that, where sometimes they can't. And it's like you said, but there are other ways to do it. I remember one of my favorite people when I first met, and unfortunately she's not around anymore, but she was a healer, incredible healer. But she nearly lost her kids and her house because she was giving all the time. She used to run amazing events in London. And I always talk about this story and then it's like someone helped her shift her business model, that she still ran all those events for virtually nothing. It was like a tenner to be in this room with her. She was incredible. But all she did then was offer something very deep for 10 people a year. So you could work with her really deeply one-on-one. And that then paid for her life so that she could look after her kids while she could give back and make all these incredible healing transformations. So yes, there's many ways that you can do it. I know you've got some favorite examples of what's a couple of your favorite examples of where people are making a difference to society or making an impact that you just love? What inspires you? Is there one or two that just inspire you?
That's hard. There's so many. There are so many amazing companies out there. And you know what? They just don't get the credit that they deserve, because, we hear about all the bad stuff on the news, which is why I just generally don't listen to the news. And we hear about sort of all the big ones, but there are just so many incredible companies that are either up and coming or some are actually very well established. Elvis and Cressy, for example, they sell very high end, like it's very expensive to buy like designer bags basically. And they've got a whole bunch of different products that they sell, but their main sort of core product is their designer bag. And it's sort of £300-500 a bag. It's all made out of recycled fire hoses that are essentially dumped and never used again.
That'll be a talking point. Oh, I've got my new bag on. It's made of fire hoses, I bet. Yeah,
I know. If you would never know.
I only knew.
No, they are stunning. They're really, really lovely.
That's amazing.
But they, from a sort of environmental perspective, they created a relationship with the local fire department, who literally were just dumping them. They had a place to just chuck them when they weren't, usable anymore. And they just sort of built up. And there wasn't really a process for disposing of them properly. So they were able to get them for free, or if not a very small, amount in comparison. They're saving the environment by doing it, because of course, after, fire hoses just damage, long period of time, it's damaged, it's rusted. Yeah, exactly. So, they recycle it, they produce these amazing things. And again, one of the perceptions that people have of this is that, you end up creating a second life, something which is sort of of a small price. But no, they've gone luxury. They've gone high end, and they've got some beautiful, beautiful bags. So, you can still look fashionable, feel amazing, and be supporting.
And recycle,
yeah, absolutely. Which
love
I think
it. What a great example.
And there's so many cafes now as well that are sort of homeless based as well. So there's one that's based up in Scotland that's just moved down to London, which I'm still yet to visit, and I really want to go. And the premise of all of of what they do is they've got a few different things that they offer. So, for example, you can go and buy 2 coffees, take one away, and then one sort of like left on the side for somebody that can't afford one. but they also take a lot of their profits and they've used it to build a community, a homeless community up in Scotland, which they then provide the services that homeless people need in order to get their lives back on track. So there's training, there's, hairdressers, and they provide them a place to live with heat and lighting and, all these sorts of different things. They help them with job applications. It's an incredible thing. And on the face of it, it's a cafe. You get a cup of coffee, cup of tea, and that's it. Some good food, but they employ homeless people too. So, the chef has been trained and he was previously homeless, but now he's got a job. He trains other people. They've expanded. It's a huge thing. And the amount of people that they've helped in the process and are continuing to help in and outside of the cafe is huge. So just something like that, it sounds like a simple concept. I just want to run a cafe, but actually you can do so much more than just run the cafe and provide good food and coffee to people. You can give it some meaning, and you can try spreading a message and spreading a word. And they've had so much support. And they've had awards, I think, from what I understand.
I imagine they would, if not, they should.
And absolutely. So they're highly recognised for it, and so they should be.
Yeah, and I love that, because I know it stems onto one of your things where you sort of talk about at the moment, and I'm going to say this because you're going to hate me for it, but the concept of basic charity is dead. You would bring that up, didn't you? I had to bring it up somewhere, but just in relation to the fact, it's like you said, it's so much easier to get people to give when there's a transaction, there's something going on. It's like you said, they're just not handing over money to something that they can't see, there's no tangible outcome, they're not sure about things. So I love these sorts of projects, because like you said, as far as you're concerned, you're going in and having a great breakfast, or you're having a nice coffee, but the impact you're having, that ripple effect, is incredible. So I love that you bring to light some of these projects. It's really, really important. So we're way over half an hour. This has been great. It's been brilliant talking to you, and I love it, because we could get into this all day. But I want to kind of share just two quick things, really. One is how can people now work with you? Because I think that if you're looking at starting a business with a difference, if you've really got that kind of, I guess, bug to do something. So, I don't do it from a charity perspective, but I always see myself with that ripple effect, that if I can change someone's life or get their knowledge out, they can go and make an impact on someone else's life and change that. And a lot of my clients do that. A lot of my clients then go on to make a difference to someone else's life. So if you're looking at making a difference, so how can they work with you? So how can they get connected with you? How can they work with you? And then the last question I always ask is, what's one wealth building tip? Because obviously it's part of Iconic Wealth. So I want to sort of start to think about, what's the wealth thing that you can think about? And really, it's got to be about bringing in giving as a concept that's part of your business, rather than just at the end, when lots of people do it at the end of their lives. So, but that's mine for you, but what's yours?
I can't steal it. Okay.
You can steal it.
I think for me, wealth is, I would definitely reiterate everything you've just said. You don't need to, philanthropy doesn't need to be something you can start once you've made money. You can absolutely start it now in anything that you decide to do. And I would also argue, my sort of pointer on wealth is, how do you define wealth? Because we're talking about it from a sort of financial perspective, and a lot of people go for, the financial perspective of, I want to be wealthy, I want to have money, and I want to have freedom and time and so forth. But actually, wealth is, what's the impact you've left on the world? What have you left your kids? What have you left your, nieces and nephews if you don't have kids? What have you left the world? And for me, I always I want to know that I've left the world a better place, and that it was better for Laura being here. And that is for me an element of wealth as well. I mean, yes, I want money too, because I want to be able to have these amazing experiences, and I want to provide an incredible life for my daughter, my husband, and all these sorts of different things. But wealth can be more than just money, and knowing how to combine the different elements of wealth that you see, and have money, and also know that you have this wealth of knowledge to spread, or that you have a wealth of experiences that you want. And for me, I know now my purpose, I want to make sure, like you were saying about leverage, the more people that I coach to have successful businesses, and to think a bit more kind of consciously about social environments, and and so forth, the more I leverage out, because the more people are creating these businesses and spreading the love, spreading the wealth, making people's lives better, all those sorts of different things. And that is wealth to me. So I would question how people define wealth, and to maybe sort of step back and think a little bit less about the money side of it, and what does it really mean to you beyond that.
I love that, because that's everything what Iconic Wealth stands for. Hence the reason we're interviewing incredible women like you, because that's what it's all about. There isn't a financial element, because we know, obviously, why I set up Iconic Wealth in the first place is that a lot of women are going to be financially deprived in their retirement, and we don't want that. We want to balance out some of these inadequacies, get that out in a minute, inadequacies around wealth. So whether it's because we don't invest enough, it's whether we don't invest in ourselves, statistically wise, we invest 40% less than men. There's still a massive gender gap in relation to pays, all these sorts of things. And obviously, I'm looking at long-term wealth and the fact that pensions and things like that are just not going to be there to sustain us. But we all know we do it with a difference. And that is what Iconic Wealth's all about. It is about making an impact now. It is about changing society, because my saying is always, if good women earn good money, they do good things.
Absolutely.
And people like Laura are the people that you need to sit down and work it out. I know I'm going to have a question, because I'm starting to think about that now. So I think that, again, we talked about starting businesses, and, like you said, my first thing was to replace my salary. And lots of people do, isn't it? You chase the money, because the first thing is, I want to get out of my job and I want my salary replaced. But then you do start to look at substance, and you go, okay, what do I really want to impact? What do I really want to do? So I really love that, is like, you can have these concepts while you're building your business, ladies. So get in touch with Laura. There'll be links around this podcast somewhere, above, below, to the side. There'll be links here for you to connect up with Laura. So do connect up, have a conversation, and start to formulate some of these ideas right now. So we want to bring in our retirement philanthropy into everyday life. So
and I love these kind of conversations as well. So I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook as well. And I love these conversations beyond sort of what I do. I do VIP one-on-one days, but I also do, I have a program that takes people from, I think I have an idea, but I'm not really sure how to go about it, all the way through to doing everything we've kind of talked about today in detail, and coming out with the business plan at the end. But to be honest, just starting conversations like this, I just thoroughly enjoy being able to talk to women and men, obviously. But I tend to find that a lot of women are really interested in this topic. And I just love speaking to like-minded women that want to do the same. So
brilliant. Love that. Thank you so much. So make sure you connect up with Laura and tune in to the next episode. Thank you so much for being here. Bye for now.
Thanks, Charlie. Appreciate it.
Thank you.